Is Red-Black Garp the most fun deck to pilot in the OPO2 meta? Yes, the answer is yes, but let's talk about it. What's up, captains? Welcome back to the other decks. My name's Casual Dobo, and today we're finally going to be doing our Garp deck profile. Now you might be wondering to yourself, why Garp? In terms of meta capabilities, he hasn't really done a whole lot in the tournaments. We've had a couple tournaments under our belts now in OPO2, but I just think Garp's fun, to be honest. Listen, it's a color combination that doesn't seem to work very well with each other, but his ability is pretty cool. There's a lot of fun combo-y things that you can do with it, and overall, I think it's just a really fascinating puzzle to try and deck build with, right? And I kind of feel this way about a lot of the dual color leaders, that they're just very interesting, and I love that, like in the OPO4 reveals that we've been getting, there's very much a focus on dual color leaders, and it just provides a lot of variety. And as I say, variety is the spice of life, so let's kind of get spicy with it. Speaking of spicy, I don't know if this is spicy, but this is definitely not the sort of deck profile I originally was going to do when I was like, oh yeah, let's do a video on this, right? I think in my first iteration of it, I leaned really heavily into sort of the black removal, which really cut down on my hand resources, just because of the nature of it, right? And so this that I'm going to be presenting is actually a little bit of a balance of that, including a couple more red, some more, traditional red removal that is not as costly. And the reason I can do this is because the core for Garp is actually fairly small, and so there's a lot of flexibility to sort of build around that. But as we're going through this deck list, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would build Garp, or any other dual color leader in this set, just because, like I said, variety, spice of life. I'd love to see what kind of variety, what kind of shenanigans y'all are coming up with. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the Garp deck profile. Alright, and like with most deck profiles, we're going to start off with our leader. So, Monkey D. Garp is a dual color red-black leader, 5,000 power, 4 life, but his effect is, on your turn, when you attach Dawn to this leader, or your characters, reduce by -1 the cost of up to one of your opponent's cost 7 or lower characters during this turn. And so each time you put Dawn onto him, you -1 the cost of an opponent's character. And this applies for most things, because most of the things that you're going to see across the board are going to be cost 7 or lower, but that does naturally mean that things that are higher than that can be a little bit problematic. Things like 9 cost Mihawk, right? But for a color that really enjoys that sort of cost reduction and has ways to follow up on it, this is a really solid leader. And to be honest, it is really hindered solely by the fact that like the removal for black does require you to typically trash one from hand. But that's our leader, that's what he does. So let's go ahead and check out the core of the Garp deck. Starting us off, we do have Suru. This is a 1 cost to play, 0k power. I don't know why it says 0k, but counter plus 2k, so really useful in that sense. But on play, give up to one of your opponent's characters -2 cost during this turn. So this is really important for those characters that do cost more than 7, because, take 9 cost Mihawk for example. You can use Suru to bring him down to 7, and now he is targetable by Garp. Speaking of Garp, we do have the character Garp that comes in OPO2. So this is the 2 cost to play, 3,000 power. Once again, another 2k counter, but fantastic ability. Dawn ×2 when attacking, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 0. So really great synergy with leader Garp, because for the most part, especially in the early game, you're going to be able to reduce a lot of things to 0. I mean, even just putting 2 Dawn onto character Garp himself, you're already, potentially KOing a, what are the 1 cost blockers? A Law, a Chopper. You can be KOing a 2 cost blocker like, Jesus, the names are escaping me right now. Bartolomeo. What a rough sequence for my brain. Now, the only real problem with Garp is that if you play him early, maybe too early, he's most likely going to get Vista'd. Like, if you're playing against red, it's going to get Vista'd. 100%. It is too valuable of a target to leave onto the board, and so if your opponent has removal, they will use the removal. But other than that, Garp, beautiful card. Speaking of removal, we do have Kobe as well, and this is the 3-cost Kobe, so 3 cost to play, 4,000 power, counter plus 1k, but on play, you can trash a card from your hand, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or less. Once again, really solid combo with Garp, who can reduce a lot of things into that range, and so you can really surprise a lot of opponents fairly cheaply by using removal Kobe. And finally, the last piece of decor is actually one of the sort of like newer additions to the deck that I included, and it's actually Starter Smoker. So 5 cost to play, 7,000 power, no counter, but ability. This character cannot be KO'd by card effects, and Dawn ×1, as long as there is a character that costs 0 in play, this character gains double attack. And just as a reminder for double attack, when it does deal damage, it'll actually take 2 life instead of 1. Now, if you've seen my starter deck video, you might remember that I wasn't too keen on Smoker. I wasn't really sure where he would fit in. And listen, he's a very good card. 5 cost to play, 7,000 power, no counter, which is okay, and is very, sticky onto the board. You have to swing over him in order to remove him. But originally, I didn't have him in here. But with Garp's ability, you can really, easily get the double attack activation going. Now, is your opponent going to leave up blockers? Sure. Are you actually going to get double attack off? Who knows? Honestly, who cares? The threat is there. And the fact that it can be made so much easier with Garp just kind of adds a different element of aggro to this deck that my previous build didn't have. And so with that, Smoker stays. Alright, so that's what I think is really the core of the deck. Let's go ahead and talk about the essentials. And unsurprisingly, it is a bunch of Navy cards. Starting us off, we have Don Quixote Rocinante, 2 cost to play, 2,000 power, counter plus 1k, so that's nice, but he's our main cheap blocker of the deck. Next up, and actually a non-Navy card, Brook, Starter Brook, right? So 2 cost to play, 3,000 power, counter plus 2k, which is really nice, but on play, gives your leader or one of your characters 2 Rested Dawn. Those 2 Rested Dawn do count for Garp's ability, so that's just a nice extra piece of utility. So utility and body on the board, Brook's very nice. Next up, you do have Kuzan. This is the normal Kuzan, 4 cost to play, 5,000 power, no counter. On play, you get the draw card, which is nice, and then when attacking, reduce the cost of up to one of your opponent's characters by 4 during this turn. Once again, a fantastic way to really handle some of the sort of larger characters that Garp normally can't target. Next up is Borsalino, 4 cost to play, 5,000 power, counter plus 1k, which is nice. On your opponent's turn, this character can't be KO'd by effects, and it gains plus 1,000 power. And it's a blocker. So this is a really excellent card, just because like Smoker, it's very sticky. It's very hard to get rid of unless you swing over it. Gets an additional power boost with its plus 1k, and overall just very solid. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the whole it can't be KO'd by effects is actually on your opponent's turn. So if it's your turn and you're swinging into your opponent and you get Jet Pistol from life, they can trigger that ability and KO Borsalino. So something to look out for. But other than that, this is a very hardy card. Next up on the essentials list is Sakazuki, 6 cost to play, 7,000 power, no counter, but on play, you can trash a card from your hand, and then KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. And really easy, once again, to get most characters into this range, thanks to Garp's leader ability. The last essential I'm going to put up on here, Meteor Volcano. So this is an event removal card, essentially, 2 cost to play, main, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less. It does have a trigger ability, draw 2, then trash 1 from your hand. But really, we're utilizing this as, fairly cheap removal, especially since Garp's leader ability can bring most characters down into this range. And that's it for the essentials. Now let's get into the fun stuff, the flex cards. The cards that really, I think, make this a unique deck that you can sort of play around with to really make it your own. So the first flex card I want to talk about here is Nami, Starter Nami from the Straw Hats starter deck. So 1 cost to play, 1,000 power, counter plus 1k, but activate main once per turn. Give your leader or one of your characters 1 Rested Dawn. So this just adds another piece of Dawn utility that you can utilize. And really good to just kind of get like a sneaky additional cost reduction out onto your opponent's board. Next up, we do have Vista, and this is actually part of that sort of more consistent removal package that I was talking about. But Vista, if you've seen OPO2 videos, you know what he does, but 3 cost to play, 3000 power, counter plus 1k, and then on play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 3000 power or less. Vista is just very good. I thought about Nico Robin in the slot for a little bit, but I do like the sort of immediacy of Vista, especially because if I'm looking to do any sort of removal, I want it now. So Vista was the play here for me, at least. Honestly, I think it's really good. Obviously, you don't need to trash anything from hand to KO something. Now, we don't have as many power reducers in here, such as, you know, Otama, but you know, you can certainly include that in replacement of some of the other flex cards I'm going to talk about, but honestly, I don't think I need it. If I'm trying to like KO something that large, you know, I can certainly use Garp, Kobe, or Meteor Volcano to do the trick. This is really for when I want to remove something kind of, to be frank, really dumb, you know? Like a small blocker or something. I don't want to trash a card from my hand just to remove a chopper from the board, right? So Vista does the trick. Plus, body on the board, I can put 2 Dawn onto him on my next turn, and he's a 5k attacker. Next up, we got Promo Luffy. So 3 cost to play, 3000 power, counter plus 2k, which is nice for our defense, but Dawn times 2 on your turn. This character gains plus 2k power. So you put 2 Dawn onto him, he goes up to 5, you activate that ability, he goes up to 7. 7k attacker for 2 Dawn, plus you get to reduce an opponent's card by 2 thanks to leader Garp. This makes sense in this deck. Reason why I would say it's a flex card is because, you know, you could put in something like Otama, who's another 2k counter, but has a little bit more synergy with Vista. Next up on our flex cards, we do have Starter Zoro, and he's 3 cost to play, 5000 power, no counter, but Dawn times 1, this character gains plus 1000 power. And because it doesn't say for the turn or anything, that plus 1k goes on your opponent's turn as well. So now that means it's a 7k to attack in, and if your opponent tries to get rid of it with their own attacker, they need to clear 6k. But I like him in here, more of a real tech card really, just because good power, good swing, and has a little bit of extra defense than compared to, you know, most other cards that I could play. And really, he's just what I would refer to as a Dawn Sponge for the leader ability. And then lastly, we do have Radical Beam. So this one is what I consider a flex because there's actually a lot of other sort of counters that you can utilize. I like Radical Beam just because, you know, we're already down by 1 life. We start off with 4. It's pretty easy to trigger that second part of the ability. And the trigger ability is a bit of a nuisance because it is, you know, plus 1k for the turn, and that can really throw off your opponent's battle math. For a while, I did have a Shockwave in here. I can see arguments for Red Hawk, you know, things that can add a little bit of removal on your opponent's side of the board. But because I'm trying to utilize so much Dawn on my turn, just being able to leave just 1 up as opposed to 2, I think really helps me kind of synergize and think about my strategy as I'm swinging into my opponent. But now that we've gone over all of the cards, let's go ahead and show off the actual deck list and ratios. Alright, and here we are at the actual deck list. So we have 1 leader, obviously, 4 Suru, 1 Nami, once again, just a small tech card, 4 Don Quixote Rosinantes, 4 Monkey D. Garp character cards, 4 Brook, 4 Vista, 3 promo Monkey D. Luffy's, 4 Kobe's, 1 Zoro, and then here are the ratios for the Navy, the bigger Navy pieces. I only run 3 Kuzan. I think seeing 4 of... I've seen him too many times, so I reduced him to 3 just because he also doesn't have a counter. 4 Borsalino, just because fantastic blocker. 3 Smoker, just so I can have a better chance of seeing him. Plus, if I can put him onto the board at 5 Dawn, like on curve, that's beautiful. And then 3 Sakazuki. Once again, I feel like I had like 4 of him in my previous deck list. Saw him too much. He's good removal, but a little expensive, and I was trashing too many cards from my hand. And then rounding out the deck, we do have 4 copies of Radical Beam and 4 copies of Meteor Volcano. And there it is. That is my red-black Garp deck profile. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you agree with the tech cards? Do you think I found a balance between red and black in this deck? Between really strong removal and you know, typical red removal. Do I need secret rare Kuzan in here? Which actually I did take out for this deck list just because he's expensive. Both like actually the card as well as Dawn. But let me know what you think, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel as we're going to be covering more One Piece TCG content. And if you're looking for more OPO2 decks, check out this video over here. Thank you so much for watching, really appreciate it, and Captains, remember, build what you like, play what you love, and I'll catch you in the next video.